the housing crisis, Medicare, energy, and global AIDS funding. Congress has a lot on its plate before its August recess. And I'm here with Senator Tom Coburn to talk about those issues and more. Senator, thanks for coming in today.
Good to be with you.
The president yesterday lifted the executive ban on offshore drilling. It's mostly a symbolic step, since Congress still has to do the same thing to allow drilling on the outer continental shelf off the east and west coast. But do you think the pressure is mounting on some of the Democrats, some of the longtime opponents of offshore drilling in the past few months as the gas and oil prices have risen?
Well, I think so. I mean, the American people get it. Prices are a function of supply and demand if you take out manipulation. And if you increase supply, you decrease price. Mm-hmm. And, we need sound policy, and we need good environmental policies. But what is happening now is the American people understand that $4 gasoline, a large portion of that is brought about because we're not tapping the resources that we have in this country. Mm-hmm. And I think they've already lost it. The question is how do they lessen their loss? And I was very glad. We had actually sent a letter about 3 weeks ago to the president saying unilaterally disarm on this thing, mm-hmm. so that it will be on the Congress. The Congress has been saying, well, he's got a ban on it, so it doesn't matter what we do. Mm-hmm. So now all the political pressure is taken off, and we have to we have to supply more, and we have to use less. We have to be both conserving, and we have to produce more, and we can. We have abundant resources, and what we have to use is common sense as we approach that, and we can do that. I mean, being from Oklahoma, we know the technology's there, and we know the environmentally sensitive nature in which we can operate that technology and bring about energy resources. But the rest of America doesn't know that, and we experience it all the time.
Sure. What about the argument that really the nation should, rather than continue its dependence on foreign oil and fossil fuels, really spend this time and make its investments in alternative energy?
Well, we ought to do both, but mm-hmm. the number one thing that we ought to do is recognize that if we wanted to get off oil tomorrow, mm-hmm. and we agreed 100% with that, it takes us 25 years to do that. Mm-hmm. In the 25 years, we're spending $700 billion to fund our enemies by buying foreign-produced energy. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't we want to? One of our economic problems is our balance of trade. Last month's balance of trade deficit was all about oil. Mm-hmm. So if, in fact, even if we all agreed with that we should have no hydrocarbon source for energy, to get there is 25 years. So if we get there, let's use our resources instead of somebody else's during that 25 years, even if we all agree to go to the point where we're totally alternative energy. But alternative energy has to include nuclear, mm-hmm. Which we still have some who are rabid environmentalists that say, we don't want nuclear. Well, nuclear is the safest, cleanest, greenest energy we can have, mm-hmm. and it is one of the answers. The other thing is we are the world's Middle East when it comes to coal mm-hmm. and shale, and yet we can convert that in an environmentally friendly way and lessen the grip that the rest of the world has on us as consumers in terms of oil production.
Let's talk about the housing crisis. Congress is already working on a bill that would have probably helped some people possibly stay in their homes. Now you've got the problems with these big mortgage financing giants, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, and Congress now looking at possibly extending more taxpayer protections, including buying Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac stock. What do you think of congressional intervention, and should the market just do its business and Congress watch on the sidelines, or what's your role?
Well, I think Congress didn't do its business and didn't have the regulatory approval it should have had for the GSEs, the Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. I'm not sure I would have ever created those. Mm-hmm. What we saw is an extreme bubble in terms of price. And we also saw extreme deficit in terms of moral leadership by a lot of the people lending people mm-hmm. money who couldn't afford mm-hmm. What they were buying. And so we got an excess. How do we get out of it? One is you reestablish confidence, and you don't do it the way Chuck Schumer did it by undermining a bank and causing a run on a bank like
IndyMac.
And IndyMac, and that was directly related to him. They were fine until then. One is the Federal Reserve has issued new rules on mortgage guidelines, and they should have. Mm-hmm. Number two, there needs to be new guidelines, federal guidelines that states have to meet, not the appraiser. There's a big problem on appraisal system in this country. People appraising for the loan rather than appraising the property. Number three is they are government service agencies or enterprises. And so we do have to ultimately guarantee them. Whether the Federal Reserve opens the discount window to actually allow them to place mortgages for cash to create capital, that's a step that said we'll use it if we need to. That's not any different than investment banks. My hope is that we can get past this. The best way to do that is to take all the pain and not delay the pain. And there's a great model for America to follow. If you look at what happened to the Japanese economy and their banking industry.
In the 90s?
In the 90s. Well, actually, they just kind of got over it in the last 2 years. It's about 14 years because they refused to recognize the economics of the situation they were in. They had 14 years of deflation and minimal growth in the Japanese economy. And that means everybody went down, nobody went up in terms of standard of living because they didn't take the pain. Well, the pain is we're about 2/3 of the way through the housing crisis, but we've got another 10 or 15% for housing prices to fall before they're at the average what they would have been on a historical growth pain. So we still have some pain to go, but delaying the recognition, taking our medicine, we should take our medicine, and the federal government should be there. But the only thing that I even like about the housing bill is that we're putting new rules in to actually hammer and control these quasi-government agencies that are out there loaning things. One of the reasons they have the problems they were arbitraging. They were selling loans into the market, creating a security out of it, and then because they thought they were smarter than the market, they were buying them back at a higher price than what they'd sold them for. They were arbitraging their own investment, which has created a significant problem in terms of their losses.
How worried are you about the overall economy? Are we in a mental recession, or are we in a recession?
No, I think, well, we're definitely in a slowdown. You know, the technical definition, if you throw that out the window, look, a recession is how it affects you. And hundreds and thousands of millions of people in this country are being affected because their wages don't buy the necessities that they need to have right now. And that's because of a tremendous increase in the consumption of in the price of energy, both in terms of consuming for transportation, but what we're going to see this fall and this next winter in terms of how that plays out in terms of running your home, both in heating and cooling. So, unless you're getting a big raise, you're feeling a change economically, and that's the important thing, and that's the psychological thing. And the only way we solve that is to create an impression that we're going to become energy independent and pop this bubble on oil, which I believe it is a bubble. I believe everybody understands there is growing demand, but there's not that much growing demand. And then get our economy growing again. And we have certain segments of our economy. Oklahoma's doing pretty good, except for the people that are lower middle income and lower income because the discretionary spending that they have is all going towards energy.
Let's talk about the Medicare bill. The president's expected to veto that today. This is a bill that is seeking to stop about a 10% reduction in Medicare payments to physicians and pay for that by cutting some of the government bonus payments for the private Medicare Advantage.
Let me rephrase that.
Okay.
I disagree.
Okay.
This is the first step towards nationalized government-run health care. It's using the false claim that this is about doctor payment. If it was about doctor payments, we would solve it and they wouldn't be back here in December of 2010, would they? But it doesn't fix the doctor payment. What it does is it undermines the only way doctors have an opportunity not to be in this bind in the future. And so what has been happening very cleverly is we have an entitlement expansion here too. That's the other thing I would want Oklahomans and Americans to know is this not only does that, we have expanded entitlements to the tune of about $3 billion a year with this bill by subsidizing at a much higher level everybody's drug purchases. So the false claim is we're fixing the doctor thing. We're fixing it for 18 months. We didn't fix it at all. We're gutting a program that is the only hope for physicians to ever get out of government-run health care in the name of getting them more money, and at the same time, we're gutting a program that will help seniors have more service at a better price with better quality. And the other thing that we're doing is we're adding $160 million worth of taxes to seniors under this bill. 2.3 million will lose their Medicare Advantage, and $160 million will be paid out in additional copays under Part B by seniors under this bill. It's a tax increase on seniors and a decrease in choice on seniors.
But I mean, you're a physician and treat Medicare patients. I mean, you don't object to, or let me just ask it this way: would it be a hardship on some seniors if the AMA was warning that if that cut went into effect, the payment to physicians, that some might stop seeing
the cut is going into effect. It's going into effect today.
Right.
The effect is, because they passed this bill and didn't work with the Bush administration, the cut is going to go into effect today.
But the bill will restore the payment.
I don't think so. I got a feeling it's not going to be overridden.
Is that right?
I have this little sneaky feeling. So we'll be right back to what we said, is you got to work across the aisle, you got to work with the president to fix this.
Right. Well, hypothetically then, if there were a 10% reduction in Medicare payments to physicians, would that, do you think, cause some physicians to stop seeing?
They're already
Medicare
stopping
payments?
seeing
Because
without it. No, the fact is physicians are getting beat down all the way. Their costs are going like this, and their revenues are doing this. And if you have somebody to choose from, something that pays you 20% higher or Medicare, which one are you going to take when you have limited hours? So what's happened is we have a decreasing number of doctors coming into healthcare. We have a geographic distribution that is unbalanced based on tort laws. If you want to go to Texas, there's 1,600 new doctors down there. Oklahoma's lost about 200. We've had about another 100 retire. It's already happening. And so this isn't going to stop it. And so the answer is one of two things. We're either going to let the government run it all, and all the doctors will work for the government, and that's what we voted for. That's the first step of what that bill was. Or we're going to allow market forces and transparency and quality and price to determine what healthcare is worth, and we're going to let market forces temporize that. We don't need more money in healthcare, Chris. We have too much money. What we have is a third of it's wasted, and we don't have a market today. It's just like on CTs and MRIs and Medicare. It's $10 billion a year. It's doubled in the last 6 years. Why? Because we don't have market forces. We have a government system that says, you bill us, we'll pay it. Rather than saying somebody that's a medical home, if you got a medical home and a primary care doctor says, you don't need a CT.